Recording starts now. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As I mentioned, please ask any question through the chat, in the chat box in the Q&A panel, and we will move on to an overview of the agenda today. So we will start off with a fireside chat on Digital First Story by Ruby Tuesday, moderated by Carlson and led by Leslie Bailey from Ruby Tuesdays. And then at 10:45, we will go into a panel discussion where Carlson will lead Leslie from Ruby Tuesday, Gavin from Visas, and Rimas from Global Payments in the discussion. And then towards the end at 11:20, we will actually have a 10 to 15 minutes panel Q&A session where everyone can actually voice out your any questions that you may have you can either raise your hand or you can also send your question through the chat. Right. So I'll hand it over to Carlson. Over to you, Carlson and Leslie.
Thank you, Esther.
Hi, everyone. So while Esther is just giving me the presenter, if you don't mind, Esther, I'll just do a quick introduction. So my name is Carson. I'm the CEO of Tofugear, and we're a tech company. We help retailers achieve more with less by enabling their unified commerce capabilities. And with me today, I have the man, the myth, the legend himself in the food and beverage industry, Leslie Bailey. Leslie, do you mind to maybe just introduce yourself?
Thank you, Carson. That was very kind, somewhat humorous. I'm Leslie Bailey. I'm the Managing Director for Ruby Tuesday Asia Pacific, based in Hong Kong. I've been with the company 2 years. Prior to that, I was in the Middle East for 7 years. And before that, I lived and worked in Hong Kong and worked regional roles for 16 years. So I know a little bit about the industry and the region.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Leslie. So today, we're going to pick your brain quite a bit, I think. I'm sure the audience is very curious what a digital first success story looks like for Ruby Tuesday. So let's dive right into it, shall we?
Okay.
But before we do that, to kind of tackle right away this whole overarching theme of this webinar today, this idea of the new normal. And just to break it down and make it really simple for everybody, I want to really make sure that we're clear in talking about sort of the same definition here. While essentially, I like to think of this as one of the most dramatic turn of events from going to the world that we understood last year to essentially where we are today. And it's really broken down into 4 key changes when it comes from a consumer perspective. So the new normal for consumers, right? And there are 4 key things. One is the propensity to save has increased a lot. So people's economic, woes and things like that, concerns about their futures has caused people to look at their bank accounts and to maybe be a little bit more frugal about their spending. The propensity to travel is obviously way down. Currently, that's just a restriction for most people, but we can expect this to be the same even as restrictions lift. You might see an initial kind of burst of people wanting to get out and go places, but after that, we can expect travel to remain at a minimum, even as travel restrictions go down. Another one, which is really important, and I think especially very relevant for today's conversation, is an elevation in the value of personal health. So because people have just gone through quite an interesting time when it comes to health, personal health is something of a big concern for people, more so than it was before. So when they make their purchase decisions, whether they be food and beverage related or not, personal health is going to come much higher up in the ranking in terms of asking yourself a question, or a few questions before you buy something, right? And the same thing that kind of goes hand in hand with that is the environment. So people are paying a lot more attention to their impact and their consumer behavior impact on the environment around them, right? And so these are really the 4 key things that I want people to remember as we go in and we start to talk about some of the things that this new normal means for not only for Ruby Tuesday, but for the food and beverage industry and by extension, the retail industry as a whole. So Leslie, I'm going to ask you a similar question later in the panel, but have you personally been making any changes in your day-to-day life, or have you seen any changes in consumer behavior that lines up with this or is any different from this?
I think, just to provide context, whether we like it or not, the new normal for all of us is instability. A BCG article this last week hypothesized that we've experienced 7 years of change in as many months, and we can expect COVID-19 to amplify many more changes in the next 4 to 5 years. So, for us, at APRT Ruby Tuesday, that's meant not only embracing technology, but also investing heavily in technology to better meet those expectations of the consumer, especially around, consumers being more conscious about hygiene in the restaurant. So, we'd already started to work on this prior to COVID-19, but, we're now accelerating that. People want to be able to use their own mobile phones to view the menus, to experience the product, if you like, before they actually, get the product. So the whole idea of contactless menus, contactless payments, it is something that should be top of mind for every restaurant operator around the world. And and it's difficult being in food service, trying to reduce the amount of contact whilst we're in a service industry, if you like, where contact and and being able to interact with individuals is key to our success.
Yeah. So actually that brings up a really good point, because you mentioned just now that this is something that even before this whole shift to new normal, right? Not only Ruby Tuesday, but a lot of us here, we're all here in Hong Kong, right? So a lot of us here in Hong Kong were already facing some challenges, right, that were pushing us in the right direction, or I shouldn't say the right direction, but in this direction. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
What you have to remember is that for Hong Kong, we had we endured 12 months of civil unrest. So we'd already had a lot of problems that were impacting consumer behavior from May, June of last year. So in a way, for us, we'd already started to consider the medium to long-term outlook for our operations before the pandemic hit, and we were already looking at ways to reduce our overheads, increase efficiency, and if you like, digitize the customer experience as much as possible, and invest in the relationships we have with our customers. Mm-hmm. So we were already looking at how we can interact with the consumer remotely, and I believe that gave us a head start. So it's not just about our own mobile app, but it's also about the technology in managing the back of house that we introduced at the beginning of this year, in order to better meet operational needs. So we were already thinking of this, and as you know, Carson, we found you, and that was the reason that we engaged with Tofugear, was because we wanted an out-of-the-box solution. We wanted a best-in-class consumer experience, and we believed that it was better to borrow from retail than continue or look at existing solutions within food service, which, I think for us, didn't quite measure up to what we expect of the future.
Yeah, and definitely, borrowing from retail. Obviously, we come with a very rich retail background, so we took that and we looked at that together quite strategically, I think. And this is where we sort of looked at not only Ruby Tuesday in terms of the the member experience and the consumer experience, but the overall digital transformation. How could we get Ruby Tuesday to be operating at its maximum potential? So then everything, your focus, your team's focus is really about spending time with the customer and delivering that value to customer, right? So when we looked at this with you, we prioritized this into 3 core areas. The first was the loyalty aspect, which we looked at the omni-channel loyalty program. We looked at how could we maximize customer retention and how we could build customer insights and member insights so we could better personalize the customer experience for them. The second sort of bucket is the customer experience itself. So, key areas are looking at how can we make the overall customer journey more convenient, from the point of deciding, hey, I want to go and I want to go to Ruby Tuesday for lunch or for dinner or whatever, to through that entire customer journey down to the point of thinking about your next visit. We wanted to make that whole experience more convenient. We wanted to make it more deeply personalized. So you felt like you were almost, I like to think of it as almost kind of like having a certain element of, being able to go to a home kitchen, right? And making Ruby Tuesday feel like that home kitchen, right? That I could just go to and get exactly what I want, how I want it, right? When I want it. And then make that whole experience from touch point to touch point to touch point completely seamless. And I know that part especially is one that you're very passionate about as well. And then the third sort of area is the operational excellence. So how can we really make sure that we're not only delivering on the customer experience promise, but also the delivery promise as well. So that means the speed of service has to be obviously really, really good. We want to make the restaurants as efficient as possible. We want to empower the staff so they're not only doing the best that they can do, but they feel proud of what they do. And streamline the back office so that way everything is running smoothly from management down to the front line. And this was all built on what we call a unified data estate. Okay, so everything is building on this giant data estate that is then enabling us and enabling you guys to make the right decisions and the right informed decisions. So the solutions that we employed to kind of achieve all of this are as follows. So we obviously wanted to look at the mobile application. We'll get into a lot of that here in a little bit. We'll focus on that in a little bit. The loyalty program and the loyalty program design, and that's actually more of a membership, right? Use of some certain kinds of IoT technology, specifically iBeacons and that sort of stuff to help contextualize the experience when people are at the restaurant more, and enabling that contactless aspect as well. Digital payments, obviously a really big important part of this whole journey. We're certainly going to talk a lot about that in the panel. E-reservations, so making the whole that whole part of the journey a little bit easier, so people aren't feeling like they need to make a call to see if the restaurant's busy or whatever. They can just go on the app and they can pick a table and that's it, right? And then of course digitizing operations, so again getting that back of house, moving up to speed with the customer experience. So Leslie, the loyalty program, right, I know for you is one of what has always been and will probably always be one of your biggest priorities, because I think it makes it's very unique for Ruby Tuesday in this particular case.
It is.
You could just share with everybody why the loyalty program is such a big priority for you.
Okay, so actually, our loyalty program is more than loyalty. It's a membership program. It's a paid program. We've actually had it for 17 years in Hong Kong, and it was actually introduced during SARS in 2003 as a means to drive business into our restaurants. So we now have, and I should mention that we are, a franchise operation. Okay, so we have a database of 300,000 customers. So we can tell you where our most loyal customers live. We can tell you, approximately, what their disposable income would be. We can tell you what their favorite products might be. So it is a game changer for us. So during the civil unrest, we were able to, drive customers into other restaurants that weren't affected by the sporadic protests, and we were able to, tell customers of, operating hours during the pandemic and any changes that there might have been. So really, in engaging with Tofugear, it's about taking it to the next level. So we made a conscious decision to pursue more of a commerce-based system that incorporates all of the previous elements like CRM, loyalty, POS and payment elements, and put them in one place, and to create more of a personal, customizable experience for guests to consume the product. So, and ultimately in the future to take advantage of AI-driven learnings to assist our team in providing better service. So with many more touch points than any other system in the market, including optimization across the front of house and back of house operations, we intend to be at the forefront of the industry in Hong Kong, if not the region.
Well, it's definitely looking like that, or at least we're definitely, I think, well on our way to achieving that, right? So maybe again, focusing on the loyalty program, I'm sure the audience would really want to know, what were your objectives, right? And I know a lot of not only food and beverage players, but again, also retailers are out there thinking to themselves, this whole new normal thing, I've got to adapt, right? It's not like before. So what do I need to do, right? Where do I start from a strategic level, and what do I need to focus on? So maybe you can share what you've been focusing on to the loyalty program.
I mean, ultimately, so we have a large database, and we have a large percentage of active users. So we're, number one, we're looking to acquire more customers like everybody, and especially those that we know, live close by. Live close by to our restaurants, and those that we have had a past relationship with. And then, in terms of, the second objective is really identifying those current customers and seeing how we can boost their spending with us. So we know that we have a very loyal base where we would have, some of our customers coming to us 4 to 5 times a week. And we can rank them, and they take great pleasure in being ranked and knowing that they're the number one customer, or that they're in the top, 1,000 customers. And then, again, for everybody with a loyalty program, it's about personalization and making sure that your promotions and your offerings are more effective. And again, in this environment, it's this type of activity that sets you apart from your competition. And we know that our competitors are copying us, and to be quite honest, I'm glad that they are, because it means we're doing something right. And then again, in terms of using the loyalty program and communication and speed of communication, so that we can reduce the churn, and then re-engaging lapsed members, we're using the loyalty program and the attributes and the behaviors in order to retain customers and ultimately to re-engage and have people come back. And then, in terms of growing share, of the customer's wallet, and increasing the average customer value. So, offering, events that are for members only, providing a free meal every month, or a free drink, and being able to do this and communicate to our customers remotely through our loyalty or membership program and the mobile app. It all has a significant upside to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on that note about your competitors, right, and copying you, I'll quote every other luxury brand I've worked with, which is imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery.
Yeah.
So,
my team get quite upset about it, and they say, "Oh, such and such has done this, and it's been a few days after we've done it," and I'm like, "That's great." Because ultimately they don't understand the rationale behind it, and they don't have the strategies, and they don't have the tools. So let them copy away.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we won't give away too much then today in this session. But to take your objectives, right, and really boil it down, and just to give the audience of where we went from there, right? We looked at what is going to make this loyalty program succeed in terms of those objectives, and what are the most important attributes that we need to focus on from a customer perspective, right? And so we broke it down into kind of 3 main areas. with 4 attributes each. So one is the requirements that will help Ruby Tuesday to stand out. Obviously, being innovative, that always stands out in people's minds when you do something better and you improve upon the ways in which people are doing things. And again, the fact that your competitors are looking and trying to copy you just speaks for that. The second is differentiation, so how are you separating yourself from your competitors, and really focusing on that as well. The third is relevance. So how relevant are you to your customers? Do you really know your customers well enough to be relevant to them? And this is, again, where that whole unified data estate comes in handy. And then finally, the emotional connection. Are we really delivering and driving to the hearts and minds of our customers? And so that's really what's going to help Ruby Tuesday stand out, right? The second area are the qualities that consumers react positively towards. So these are a little bit more subconscious, right? These are things where people get a little bit of a sense of delight as part of the experience. So if it's a simple experience, it's easy, it doesn't take a lot of time, it's transparent. So when it comes to the use of personal data and other things like that, it's very clear and concise as to, kind of the genuineness behind the program and what it's meant to do. Building trust with consumers. So again, that two-way communication as well is very important. And then finally, I think one of the most important, especially nowadays, is the convenience, right? So are we delivering a service that is helpful and makes the entire ceremony, of dining more convenient for consumers? And that always plays well into things that consumers react positively towards. And then finally, we want to look at the incentives program. So how do we drive loyalty itself, right? How do we incentivize the customers to come back? Again, relevance, super important. So making sure that the rewards that we're giving are actually something that people are interested in. There has to be a sense of value. So I think that is something that's very unique that's delivered by Ruby Tuesday, again, because it's a paid for membership program. You pay for a membership, therefore you get real tangible value with that membership. That's just the way the exchange works here. Non-financial rewards are also very important. So having not only a balance of things like coupons and whatnot to drive consumption, but as well as non-financial incentives. You mentioned events and things like that. These are great ways to really boost that membership affiliation. And then finally, a more tiered approach. So how do we gamify all of this and make the customer feel like they are part of a membership program, that the more they spend, the more they consume with you, the better rewards that they're going to get. And that's generally how we looked at this, and we essentially broke it down.
I think
so.
I think also is to remind the audience that none of these are mutually exclusive. Everything in these buckets, okay, they all work together to add value. And value that the consumer is looking for. So I think that's worth remembering, is that you can't have one without the other. These all work together.
Yes, exactly. So it was actually exactly with that mindset that how do you bring all this together, right? And that was sort of the question that kind of first came across my mind, and that's when we recognized that we had to especially given the context at the time that we were in, which again, mentioning, this 12 months of civil unrest and kind of the changes that we had to deal with back then, right? We recognized that we had to develop a very customer-centric app, one that customers were willing to pay for, literally pay for. So for Ruby Tuesday, right? I remember, when we first met and we first started talking about this as well, you were also going straight there. You're right to saying, we need to have a better app. Why was that super important for you, from the get-go? And, how does this differentiate from just, other apps that you've seen?
I think first and foremost, there was a number of aha moments on the way. So, first and foremost, in the good old days, your first and last interaction with in a restaurant was with the host or hostess at the door when you arrived and at the door when you left. Now, whether people like it or not, the reality is that today, okay, your first and your very last interaction with us as a modern food service operator is through your mobile application, through your loyalty programs and through your membership programs. So they need to be fit for purpose. And to be very candid, I recognized early on that the system that we had was somewhat antiquated, and it didn't allow for the best experience. Okay, so again, looking forward, looking at what's happening in the world, if you look at the way you interact with banks, and with other service providers, your apps should be fit for purpose. Okay, and it's also recognizing that we are in the midst of profound environmental and social change, and one of the things that we also found in introducing the online reservation system was that people are happy to interact with you when they're making a reservation, as one example, when they're making a reservation, but they don't want to interact with you when they're not fulfilling that reservation. So again, people are generally happier to interact with technology than they are with real people. Okay, and to paraphrase Charles Darwin, we need to acknowledge that it's not the fittest, it's not the strongest that will survive. It's those that will be most adaptable to change. And if you have embraced or are about to embrace technology, whether it's at the front of house or the back of house in your operations, then you're more likely to exist after the COVID-19 event than you are without it.
Yeah. So in this context, I think it's quite important to note that, the change that you're referring to here is not just, going through and kind of Band-Aid fixes. This was really something that was meant to say, hey, we're going to take the entire customer journey and we're going to make it something that you can do through this app. So everything from, booking that table to canceling that booking to rebooking to then coming and placing an order before you arrive or even while you're there, down to the payment, all the marketing that goes in between, and then the loyalty and the retention processes that go thereafter are all compacted into one mobile experience and one membership program.
Yeah, and I think for us, the most important thing in, as we ran an RFP, a request for proposal, and we went to, everybody that you would in a food service environment, to the existing service providers, and the reason we settled with Tofugear was because of the promise of bringing key learnings from high-end retail, and so the ability to place orders, to experience the menu, browsing remotely and booking tables and order placing remotely, the ability to pay and integrate mobile payments in the future, to personalize the experience through AI learnings, to contextually engage with customers inside and out of our stores, and to interact and deliver a seamless experience in the stores, and ultimately to take the membership program and the loyalty that we have to to a completely new level. So again, and just to be clear with the audience, the easiest route for us to have taken would have been to have engaged with an existing mobile application provider. I don't believe it would give us now or in the future the edge that we need in order to stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, so I guess the lesson there for the audience is you have to be really willing to make serious changes and not, again, just those Band-Aid fixes that I was referring to earlier.
Absolutely.
So focusing on the app for a second, because I'm pretty sure everybody's, because I really want to make sure when we're talking about digitizing the entire experience into a mobile format for a food and beverage, service, right? That isn't just delivery. I want people to really kind of understand what that really means and what that entails, right? So is this membership app just another, app with a QR code to scan at the door and some coupons? Or, in your view, what is it functionally?
Yeah, I mean, so let's be very clear. This is not a two-dimensional app. This is very much a three-dimensional app. If you like, it's about taking us to a whole new level. So it's a tool for customers to make their experience with us, much more enjoyable, and to emphasize on the convenience. So, when you go to a restaurant, I know that you can see this, maybe not, a little difficult, but you use a menu, right? Everybody uses a physical menu. So imagine if you have your menu on your mobile application, and on that menu, you can browse without touching something that belongs to us. You're using your own device. It's cleaner, it's more hygienic. So you've got the menu browsing. You can call the waiter or the waitress for assistance remotely at the table through the application. You can review your current points and your tiers. You can look for restaurant locations. You can save and order your favorite menu items. You can remote order your, make order remotely, either at the door before you enter the restaurant or from your office. Okay, and you can view your coupons and so on and so forth. So every interaction that used to require staff assistance can now almost entirely be digitized. Now, we employ 385 people. It's not my goal to employ any less. It's my goal to make sure that the people we employ, okay, have the best possible tools so that when they interact with our customers, they provide a personalized experience, and they provide, an experiential experience compared to the competitors, that they do something with more thought and more consideration. So, from the sign up and member acquisition process through ordering and payment, the plan is to basically do everything through the app. So all of these cool things that everybody's talking about, and you would have, we looked at it during the RFP, process. So there's very few providers doing all of this. Generally, you would need to deal with, maybe 5 or 6 different service providers and APIs to make this work. And we made a big call in working with one vendor so that it would be seamless and therefore a better experience.
Yeah. So I think this, just a tasting platter, if I can say that, of what the grand strategy is. Maybe you can share with the audience a little bit, because this is really looking at what we've done. What are your priorities now? What are sort of the next parts that need to be continuously iterated on, and what are the kind of the things that you're looking towards for the the medium term of Ruby Tuesday in terms of digitization?
Yeah, well, as you can see from the slide, right? So self-service, and by self-service, what do we mean? Well, it's the opportunity to order and pay, without having to interact with a member of staff. Contactless payments. It's very important. People don't want to handle cash anymore. Cash was on its way out. To some respects, with the use of credit cards and contactless payments and Octopus and so on and so forth. But COVID-19 has really underscored to us that people don't want to handle cash at all. They want to use credit cards, they want to use Octopus, and they want to be able to do it by tapping on a machine or paying remotely. And then, the mobile first experience in terms of, that online ordering and in location, near field communication, the NFC driven purchase. So when, you might be standing at a door waiting to come in, for example, and you've already selected your dishes that you're going to order. So that when you get to your table and you sit down and you scan a QR code or we're using NFC, is that automatically your order will go to the kitchen and print. So they're working on your order as soon as you sit down, okay? And then, the opportunity to buy anytime, anywhere, on any device. So we're not saying you must use Android or you must use iOS. You're using your own device, right? So again, customers are much more, today that they want to use their own mobile phone. If you go into a restaurant, everybody's taking photographs of food. Everybody's got a mobile phone, and generally they are, they're interacting with their technology at the table already. And then in terms of in location operations, being augmented by digital. So again, optimizing staff operations, and by this again, it's not about taking away the personal service. It's about improving the personal service and ensuring that our team deliver a much better experience, right? So that they know your name, they know your favorites, they can make recommendations. If you're not ordering yourself, again, being able to, through the mobile application, to tell the team, well, this is Mr. Chan or this is Mr. Wu, and he wants the ribeye, and and then to recommend side dishes and beverages to go with that. Again, it's all about improving the experience and of course, increasing your share of wallet. And having people spend more money.
That's the key right there.
That's the key, right?
So just to kind of quickly summarize some of the things that we're looking at here, guys. Obviously, membership is a lot different than a loyalty program, right? This is again something that from everything from the simple sign up process to paying for memberships, to then the staff incentives as well that kind of need to go with that to make sure we drive member sign up and retention and these kinds of things. These are all sort of part of the key strategic elements that make this whole program work. We talked a little bit about enabling self-service. So just to kind of give you a picture of what that looks like. So being able to not only book a table, pre-order your meal before you arrive. So when you arrive, you sit down and there's no time you have to sit there and wait, to order and things like that, which the restaurant, I can say for Leslie, really appreciates as well. Get those table turn times up, right? Yeah. And being able to securely pay. And we're going to talk a little bit more and focus a little bit more on security and payments and fraud during the panel. Maximizing customer value even during a pandemic. So again, being able to browse and favorites, the favorite capabilities. I know it sounds really simple. It sounds really kind of like, why didn't anybody else think of this? But can you favorite anything on Deliveroo or Food Panda, not to name and shame or anything, but you can't, right? They don't, and there's a reason why they don't want you to, because they want you to try other things, but we're creatures of habit, right? So being able to just go on there, favorite your favorite things and go right to it and pick and choose from your list of favorites for me is an absolute delight. Being able to pay for takeaway and then just walk up to the restaurant nearby and pick it up, all in one seamless experience. Points are gathered and all that kind of stuff as well automatically. That's really nice. Reducing the staff interaction. So again, this is something that we're going to be implementing soon, which is being able to actually tap on a table that you're sitting at, and a server will come and help you at that table using your phone. So that's pretty cool. So to kind of wrap up in terms of the key takeaways and what's really important from a strategic point of view, before we go into a quick summary of the outcomes that have been achieved thus far. Customer insights, obviously this is the kind of the foundation that has to be there in order to actually do this stuff. We talk about it like it's easy, like we had all the answers beforehand, but the reality is it did take quite a bit of study in terms of how, Ruby Tuesday's customers behave and the types of consumers there are and these kinds of things. So that, can't go without any merit. Personalization, obviously very critical, especially now people are really looking for that more home-like experience. Being able to increase sales and also the membership aspect as well, the convenience factor, and then of course empowering the staff. This is something that maybe we didn't spend enough time on today, but maybe we can have a follow-up session next time to talk about the staff aspect as well. So Leslie, we are short on time, but maybe very quickly you can just share what are some of the business outcomes that we've managed to achieve thus far.
Right. Okay. So for a lot of food service operators, table turn. Okay. So we're still on phase one of of our rollout, but we have a 16% increase in table turn by speeding up service and shortening waiting times. So that's real money in the pocket. A 2% increase in year-over-year loyalty member spending, which of course post-COVID will be considerable. A 22% increase in the online loyalty member base. Again, because we have an app that is now fit for purpose. A 21% increase in member retention from satisfaction, again, specifically because the app. Table value, so an 103% increase in reservation callback rates. I can't, again, if you're in food service and you know that if people have made a reservation and they don't turn up, it is a huge issue, right? Because you're holding tables for 15 minutes and that's lost revenue. And then customer service a 12% reduction in no show, right? So those are tangible benefits of implementing a digital first strategy in food service, and again, this is why we are still here, we are still operating as a relatively small operator in Hong Kong. Okay.
Yeah. Fantastic results. So we do have one question from the audience, which I think we can address quickly. Is there, and this is from Jen Lee, is there a strategy we can benchmark before deciding if a loyalty program is required for our business, given that our product or service is already at a 90% adoption rate? That's an interesting question. So I guess there's two main things that, and I think this is more a question for me, unless Leslie, you have some ideas as well. But there's really two things that you have to look at. One is, what is your current retention rate, right? So you might have 90% adoption, but those could be customers cycling in, cycling out as well. So you need to look at the retention rate. That's very important. But also, you need to look at the macro outlook. You need to look at the long term. Are there any major strategic threats to your business, competitors potentially rising up? Because you might not necessarily need a loyalty program, but you might need to be looking at your product. You might need to innovate in that aspect as well. And that actually in and of itself is driving customer loyalty. So again, a loyalty program doesn't always translate to, this kind of membership program like what Ruby Tuesday is employing, but you still need to look at ways in how you retain that 90%. So I hope that answers your question. Leslie, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it beautifully. But I just want to go back to what I stated at the beginning of the session. Whether we like it or not, the only thing that you can be sure of moving forward is instability. Yes. I lived in Hong Kong for 16 years prior to moving to the Middle East and living there for 7 years. We came back because my wife is Hong Kong Chinese. She believed that Hong Kong was a safer place. Okay. We had 12 months of civil unrest, followed by COVID-19. Okay. So instability. You need to be prepared for the future. You've got 90%, fantastic. If you don't have the other 10%, why not?
And very wise words. I think that should be our key takeaway right there. So I think that's it for the fireside. Thank you again. So I'll pass it back over and we can set up for the panel.
Thanks, Carlson. Thanks, Lee. Very engaging session. We'll move on to the panel discussion. We'll get Rimas as well as Gavin join us back on the video.
I'm here.
Hello, everyone.
Hey. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
So I'll just go ahead and kick things off, I guess.
Yep.
So we've invited Remus and Gavin here to join us with Leslie again to further build on the discussion that I just had with Leslie on this whole topic of the new normal and expanding, a little bit beyond the loyalty aspect and Ruby Tuesday and looking at some of the other aspects of business as well. Digital transformation, e-commerce, customer experience, a lot of these things, that we've been talking about, to be honest, you guys know it best as much as I do, have been stuff we've been talking about, for the last 10 years, right? It's on the business, it's on every business leader's mind now for the last decades, if you're in the consumer space anyways. However, we've had quite a dramatic turn of events, right, over the past few months, or at least for this calendar year. And this is probably one of the most dramatic turn of events ever faced by the consumer goods and services industries, especially when it comes to consumer behavior. Consumer values have obviously been shuffled. Social norms have changed quite drastically. And the economy has made doing business in the consumer space more competitive than ever. So with me today, we've got Leslie Bailey, who's the managing director of Ruby Tuesday, who we've just had a wonderful conversation with already, so you guys should know him very well. Gavin Ho, he is the head of merchant sales and solutions for business development at Visa. And we've got Remus Ho, who's the vice president of sales, Hong Kong and Macau for regional marketing at Global Payments. And then again,
just in case anyone's wondering, Remus and I are not related.
I literally just noticed that, and I was thinking to myself, like, did I do a typo?
Maybe many generations before, yeah. We don't know.
And then again, you have myself, the chief executive of Tofugear, as the moderator. So to kind of kick things off, again, new normal, right? All this crazy stuff happened. What is the craziest, most unexpected or interesting observation or experience that you have had, either as part of the shift towards this new normal or as a matter of fact? Maybe we can start with Leslie. What is the craziest thing you've experienced over the past few months, my friend?
Well, without using any expletives, so I think what hit home for us was I had the great pleasure of hiring a very talented young man who was very candid when I asked him, what he would improve about Ruby Tuesday, and he was very forthright in his comments that your app is crap, and I felt that if he could be that honest with me during an interview process, then we already knew that we needed to change, and that kind of made us recognize the need to change and to look and conduct an RFP to improve what we were providing through our mobile application last year.
So brutally honest job interviews, that's probably something quite new for a lot of people these days. What's the craziest thing that you have experienced over the past few months?
To me, I think I just find that freedom is now like a luxury. So it is not something take for granted. So nowadays, a lot of lockdown or restrictions. So not just for traveling overseas, but even if you just like going outside for an exercise or jogging or gym or meeting friends, it's all becoming so difficult. And some interesting idea I see is now recently many old pictures of my friends on Facebook or IG that where they traveled before. So they're really missing the old days. And another one I feel very surprising is a staycation in Hong Kong is so interesting idea. So generating real business nowadays. Yeah, that is surprising to me.
Hey, I've been on a few staycations over the past few months, so definitely there for that one. And then last but not least, Gavin, what's the craziest thing you've experienced?
Well, for me, kind of interesting, Remus mentioned freedom is a luxury, but despite that, I actually think it's created more choice. And it's kind of reflected in how my family's lunch are organized these days. In the past, it's been a fairly mundane process. We have the same food, sitting at the same table. Now, actually, my daughter orders something from one restaurant. We could be doing pickups in another restaurant before we sit down for something completely different, different cuisine, right, around the same table for lunch. So despite the kind of decrease in freedom, actually, people are being very resilient and coming up with, there are more choices available to them.
Indeed. So I think that actually kind of goes quite nicely with my next question. So this is for Leslie. One of the craziest things I think we can all agree, actually, but you especially, is how fast businesses have been to move on this, right? So this kind of shift in behavior, right? How fast Hong Kong businesses and businesses around the world too. So not just Hong Kong businesses, but how fast businesses have been able to accelerate that capture of being able to get, the multiple orders to one household from different restaurants, right? And adapt to this whole new normal. Not just in terms of that, but also in terms of like consumer behavior, in terms of industry practices, obviously legal restrictions and things changing all the time, and not to mention the economic shifts.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, what we need to understand is whether,
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I said, what we need to remember is that, irrespective of where the consumer consumes your product, it's really about the experience. Okay, so over the last 7 months, in terms of what makes a difference and what we've learned is that speed of response, speed in communication, and the agility to adapt quickly in the market is what sets you apart. Now, having experienced SARS in 2003, I would say that we were at least 6 days, probably 10 days in front of many other organizations in communicating with our customers about our hygiene standards and the management practices that we put in place. And we'd also invested heavily in the new restaurants that we built last year, in digital displays and using videos in order to communicate and engage with our customer base. So it's been a very interesting 7 months, right? Well, 9 months, I guess now.
Actually, so that reminds me. So, I mean, again, Leslie mentioned, SARS and some of the similarities that we've seen and differences as well. Maybe Remus and Gavin, were you guys around? I mean, Remus probably. Gavin, you look quite young. You look almost as young as I am. So maybe I
was in the thick of it.
But maybe Remus can tell us, what were some of are you seeing similar challenges back then, or what's your perspective?
Yes, for customer experience, I think it's always key. And we have to always adapt to what the changes in the market, no matter in F&B or retail. So, and that's why I see e-commerce evolve quite drastically over the last few years. And in the past, maybe e-commerce is just like a one-way 1.0, that is a one direction, but now it's all interaction and all is about the data analytics. So you understand more about your customer, so to give a personalizations to your customer. That is, I think, what I see if talk about the e-commerce, why so important, and almost like the winner will take the whole market. That is very important for everyone. Yeah.
Good insights. So Leslie, bringing back to that whole aspect of technology and the role that this plays, and actually to kind of add in a question from Tom Brown from the audience as well on this, right? What role does technology play in enabling, a company like Ruby Tuesday success? And is it something that can be done, in-house, or, what is the importance of cloud specifically, as part of what you're doing?
Okay. Great question. Okay, so one example would be, adopting management systems that would have been done via, checklists, physical checklists, right, and ticking boxes and writing comments. So we were very fortunate in the fact that we changed from an older system to a new system on the 2nd of January of this year, whereby all of our checklists went from being, physical pieces of paper to being on an application, on the telephone, and we were able to communicate with our team in real time. So, when people fill in checklists, it takes, maybe a week to get those checklists back, or for the operations managers to provide, feedback. Whereas if you have something that's on a mobile application, you're actually recording it in real time. And if you have, if you have beacon technology, you can also tell whether or not that checklist has been completed, sitting in a coffee shop, next to your home, or whether it's actually being, completed in the restaurant. So, so there are, I would say those are the advantages, where we have real-time checklists being completed by the team. We have oversight. We know that they're in the restaurants. So that would be an example for me as a non-tech person, really, in regards to the adoption of digital, technology and the cloud.
Yeah. So so everything that I think that Ruby Tuesday is currently doing right now is all cloud-based, right? So, and that's what's made it possible for all these, increases in efficiency, and we'll get into a little bit later. I won't ask it now because we do have a discussion point on this later. But also, Ruby Tuesday is not, a giant, or at least I shouldn't say it like that. Your franchise operation isn't some multinational, corporation with hundreds of thousands of employees. It's a relatively small company, right? And so you don't have like all these IT people trying to figure out all these things for you all the time. It's something that you have to be quite lean about. And so relying on the cloud, relying on partners as well is another big aspect. But before we get into that, so putting on your business owner's hat, right? As it relates to technology, right? How have your priorities shifted over the past few months, or what are your views on technology, and how has that shifted? Is it just, again, another expense that's necessary to work, or is it really changing your business?
Oh, it's to be quite honest, technology, and again, I'm sure there's many people out there, and you all work in different industries, but for food service, one of the things that's always struck me is a reluctance for restaurants to learn from retail, and from retail a reluctance to learn from manufacturing, and manufacturing doesn't want to learn from anybody else, because we have all of these legacy systems and processes in place that we've invested so much money in. Well, COVID-19 has basically accelerated the change. Now, whether it's the adoption of new cook methods in the back of house, in the kitchen, so whether it's, a slow cook or an accelerated cook platform, whether it's from, however that might work, to the front of house and the adoption of, near field communication, proximity marketing. My view is, my view is that if you're not adapting to change, and change is happening all around you, you are not going to be in business very much longer. So you better embrace it. You better be talking to, your to your payment gateways, to your credit cards. You should be looking at contactless payments. You should be looking at how you monetize your digital space or the databases that you have access to. Again, my considered professional view is that if you're not embracing technology, then you might as well wave the surrender flag right here and now.
And that's a very stark warning, I think, for those who have doubts. But just before we move on to the next question, we have another question from Tom again, from the audience, which is just a very quick one. So I figured I'd ask it now, right? Which got developed first, the customer app or the employee app, including like all the checklists and some of the tools that the staff are using back of house?
Okay, great question. So all of this is happening in parallel, to be quite honest. And again, a lot of these things exist in the market. So with the even before the civil unrest, last year, I was very fortunate to have been a senior executive in an organization in the Middle East that was very forward thinking. And in coming back to Hong Kong, again, I talked about the individual that I hired to look after social media, and him being very honest. So the mobile app, we issued an RFP for that. I made a decision, and this is I made a decision in late 2018 to adopt an employee application that was very cost effective. Okay. And again, ran an RFP for that, and I adopted it based upon price. And then last year, I took my executive director to the Global Restaurant Leadership Conference in Singapore. We met with an old service provider, and they gave us a presentation on their system. And my executive director, Pong, I thought he was going to slap me, and he said, Leslie, how come you implemented this system instead of their system? And I apologized profusely, and on the 2nd of January, we implemented the staff system. So, there needs to be some learnings, I guess, but the staff app was there first. I introduced a cheap version. We now have in my mind, a far superior service, a little bit more expensive, but far superior. And with the mobile application, well, Ruby Tuesday had a mobile application for the customer for about 10 years. So the one that we had was fit for purpose when it was introduced. But obviously now we're working with Tofugear because we recognized that it was very antiquated and could not move forward. Mm-hmm. So I think you need to look at all of these things in parallel.
Yeah, so I think the key takeaway there is it's done in parallel, and it's something that has to be done that way because the employee experience and the ways of working are driven by the customer experience that you want to deliver, and they have to be matched.
It right? is just very quickly. I know it's pressed for time, but if you have an application that the staff don't like, that your employees don't like, they'll nod and they'll say, yes, boss, it's great. And then they won't use it if it's useless. So you just need to be aware of that, and you need to be honest, and you need to be prepared to say, I was wrong. I implemented a system based on cost. It was not what the team were looking for, right? The one that we have now is very different and far superior.
Mm-hmm. So definitely a lot of interesting insights. But again, I think one of the things that we can all take away is, taking a step back for a second, is a lot has changed, right? A lot has changed over the last few months. And as we just heard from Leslie, his priorities and Ruby Tuesday's priorities here in Hong Kong, not only from a technical perspective, but from a business perspective, have shifted. So Gavin, from your unique point of view at Visa, are you seeing other businesses in the food and beverage industry shifting their priorities in the same way?
Well, definitely. Actually, what we think is happening right now is not only applicable to the F&B industry, is applicable for traditional retail, goods or services. We believe it's a systemic shift, really driven by changes in consumer habits, right? Accelerated by COVID, as Leslie mentioned earlier. Just quote some facts and figures. I think just the first half of this year, if we take out your traditional travel segments, we are still seeing sustained double-digit year-on-year growth for e-commerce, right? And that trend, we believe, is going to accelerate and continue. And the fact is, we forecast globally there's going to be 2.1 billion e-commerce customers. There's surveys that we've done to say in the last 3 months in the COVID period, people are actually trying out new e-com for the first time, or for those who are doing it, they're actually doing it more. So this transformation is going to become a lot more important, driven by consumer behavior. So the discussion about how technology plays a role is really is not just a disruptor. You shouldn't see it that way. We see it as an enabler. An interesting question Tom mentioned earlier was, cloud-based. I think one of the advantages of that is it allows you to be more nimble, allows you to create and tailor your customer experiences and new processes according to your needs, right? And that's why I think from our perspective, from a payments perspective or a payment gateway business perspective, we are making ourselves much easier to work with by being internet ready, making our services available through APIs so that we can integrate into a lot of these different service providers out there and allow other users and the retailers to create the type of experiences that works for them.
I mean, just based on what you said, and we have a tendency to do this, right? It all sounds quite easy, like, oh, here's the answer, this is where it's going, right? But from your point of view, what are some of the biggest challenges, for looking at businesses today, right, in this moment? What do you think some of the business challenges specifically for the food and beverage industry that you're going to foresee over the next, few months or longer?
So we actually did a survey with a company called YouGov, looking at specifically the SMB segment. So it's a very diverse segment, but 3 common themes emerged, right? Obviously, generating income is number 1 for them, right? How do I continue to generate income in this climate? Secondly is how do I improve my cash flow management? Making sure I have money available at the end of every month to pay the staff, to pay my suppliers, to keep the business running.
Yeah.
And thirdly is, it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, this aspect of operational efficiency. Now, it's a technology question, it's a process question. There's a lot of dimensions in there, but recognizing what you said is actually not easy. In fact, I talked to a lot of what we'll classify as enterprise merchants in Hong Kong. And is actually, I recognize actually a bigger challenge for them because they have a lot of existing systems that are very difficult to change. Actually, it's probably easier, arguably, for SMEs. They're much more nimbler to implement these changes, especially with different e-com platform solutions providers like yourself, like Tofugear out there, who are creating this end-to-end, but also customizable, modular type of experiences, right? So that, yes, it's not easy, but the way the technology sector has evolved is actually making a lot easier. In the past, for example, just to set up an e-commerce website required specialist technical expertise. Not that far back, right? Maybe 10 years ago. Now, you can just create a shop in a matter of days or within a day even. It's possible. So I think it's important to find the right solutions provider who yes, I'm taking it still like as saying as if it's fairly easy. It's not, but choosing the right provider is actually very important in that aspect.
The right provider and based on what you said, I think speed, right? So being nimble, being agile, I think speed is very important. Do you think the industry is moving fast enough?
Well, I think I think what we've seen is if I quote a figure, like almost 70% of businesses in AP during COVID have already said they are trying something different. Okay, so that's a very good sign. In Hong Kong, that number is about 90%. I think we've had the benefit of the social unrest, which kind of moved the change, which kind of accelerated the changes a lot earlier. So in a way, I feel confident about it, at least, because people are reacting, people are changing. I think what we're seeing now is just the start. But I think in times of crisis, people are always more resilient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So, Leslie, as we kind of touched on before, right? You know, Gavin obviously works with a lot of enterprises who, have big IT teams, and they have people that are dedicated at just looking at this stuff. I was in a panel, yesterday at the Cloud Asia Expo, and one of the things I mentioned was about the changing role of IT from being keep the lights on to now being the change agent for everything, right? Ruby Tuesday, does it have a big IT team?
Well, that would be me and Pong, basically, right? My executive director. We're and Olivia, our head of marketing. We're the ones driving that change in that IT, and engaging with third parties like yourself, Carson, and Tofugear.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's fair to say then, partners are quite critical, especially if you're a smaller to medium-sized business, right? Because we often get sort of asked, why do I need to work with this company or that company and spend this money on, whether it be Tofugear or some agency or something like that to help be these change architects. And I think a lot of people don't realize is it takes a lot of talent and experience to do these things successfully. And so having those partners and being able to rely on them for when you need them and only when you need them is a lot more cost effective in the long run. So let's see, are there any critical issues, Gavin, that are being overlooked right now that you can foresee being something kind of like a risk or things to start looking out for in the medium to long term?
No, I think, as I said, I think what we're seeing with the kind of digital transformation is very encouraging, but at the same time, focusing on the customer experience is key. But I think to your question, what can be overlooked is just how it creates new opportunities for fraudsters as well, especially as the payments move from an offline space to an online space. It does create opportunity, and that's where I think it is important to make sure your service providers, your payment gateways have the right tools in place to allow you to control and filter out the bad transactions as these transactions move online from the good ones. So as a business operator, I mean, I believe it's not something really you should have to worry about. You should be focused on your business, right? So that's where I feel a lot of our attention and focus is at right now, is how to ensure we can provide the right expertise in a convenient manner to users out there who are embarking on this e-com journey, to do it in a secure and convenient manner.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned security, right? Remus, I wanna bring you in here because yes. I think cybersecurity, especially when it comes to payments now, with everybody moving to online payments, is becoming one of the kind of hot topics. Well, maybe not quite a hot topic yet, but I think it should become a hot topic. How has the landscape changed? Why should it be a hot topic, and why is it more critical now than ever to think about cybersecurity, regardless of your business size?
Okay, I think fraud usually increases during the economic downturns, particularly now due to the COVID. We find more users like spend time online. They almost spend quite a lot of time for no matter purchase or leisures or online. So I think Gavin has just shared many figures with us, and I just want to supplement that. Merchants have to recognize the fact that fraud is very expensive to them when it happens to their business, no matter on its financial or the reputations. Now, I see many merchants, especially the SME, the first things come to their mind is not the importance of like data security, but more to them is just to get the business for survival during the period. Now they get a new digital channel, which I think it is normal and expected behavior. But they have no knowledge, quite a lot of them have no knowledge on how these frauds happen and how to mitigate. So all these become big opportunities for cyber criminals or fraudsters online to do whatever they want. And we also see the major change is that fraud is now moving away from plastic card or card present transactions. Because with most of the merchants now embracing what we call EMV standard, which safeguard card present transactions, and the card-based frauds is very hard to do to be done than before. So more consumers are also receiving real-time alerts like SMS their card is used. So making it very hard for the fraudster to utilize the traditional approach to get fraud. That's what we see.
Okay. So actually, interestingly enough, we have a question again from Tom Brown from the audience. So I think it's knowing a little bit about how the technology works. I think it's very relevant for this. And actually, maybe even Gavin might have some thoughts on this as well. What is the role of cryptocurrencies in e-commerce, or I might even take that and extend that to blockchain technology overall? Is there a role both from a currency perspective and or a technology perspective?
Well, personally, I think crypto is, in the grand scheme of things, is still a very nascent technology, but it has tremendous potential. And the reality is the blockchain technology is not scalable enough to be adopted in retail payments. Just to give you an example, I think even Bitcoin, I think other cryptos may have advanced since then, but just transactions per second is not quite there in terms of how, compared as to, let's say, VisaNet, that processes close to 60,000 transactions per second. Crypto as a technology aren't there yet, right? So in the future, I think that's definitely a space we're watching closely. In fact, we've made some announcements, I think it was yesterday or today, about how we can work with crypto technology. So I encourage people to Google it and find out more. But as it stands, it still plays a very small role. In fact, I was talking to a friend just last week. He was a crypto fanatic. And he actually went to a bar in Hong Kong that started taking Bitcoin not so long ago. But they've stopped doing that. It's just because there isn't really that trust in the currency, that familiarity, and that convenience. So I'm not bashing crypto. I actually believe it has tremendous opportunity, but it's still very nascent as a consumer payment instrument.
Yeah, I agree with you. Remus, do you have any thoughts you want to add on that topic?
If talk about crypto today, I think for crypto to be really can spread out to the mass public, we have to look at a couple of things. First of all, is the infrastructure. And I think nowadays, crypto may be still the infrastructure to enable it is not yet built. And then the second one will be the regulations. I think a lot of regulators, they are still looking into it, but they are not putting really a lot of bold steps to really implement. We see China is doing it, but for the rest of the world, I think they still have a lot of research and decisions to be made whether it can be done. And education, I think, is one thing also very key to the mass public before it can pick up. I think crypto now, like Bitcoin, maybe still a lot of public, the image is still, it is like a speculation currency for a lot of people. So it is more for investment rather than like consumption or day-to-day transactions. So these three areas, I think, is what we are also looking at. And for crypto, I believe this is a technology later to come out. But at this moment, if talking about e-commerce today, it is still a little bit early for it, if missing the three items I just mentioned.
Okay, we got one more question. Actually, I guess we might have just sparked something with crypto here, because Jen Lee wants to know what are the most relevant industries or businesses using crypto today. And maybe I can jump in and just share, I know, for example, it's starting to be the blockchain technology itself, again, not differentiating the cryptocurrencies from the blockchain technology that is used to build cryptocurrencies, right? Blockchain is used in a number of different industries, particularly in things like insurance. I know as well, I believe it's Asia Miles that's also using or has done or used some aspect of blockchain. I'm not exactly familiar with what, but generally speaking, when you need a system of trust between multiple parties, that's generally, you know, the type of thing that you're looking for when using blockchain. So again, bridging together, you know, care providers with the patients, and then the insurance providers and any other third parties that are part of that whole, you know, healthcare life cycle or whatever. That's probably where you're going to see similar cases, right? So just being conscious of time, I hope that answers that question. So where were we? So thinking back again about fraud and about some of the issues that Remus was mentioning, maybe you can tell us, you know, how has 2020 changed things? You know, are you seeing threat really evolving? Is it harder to detect and harder to prevent issues like fraud? What are some of the challenges that are new to this year that people might not be familiar with, Remus?
Okay, and I see now frauds or cybercrime has changed a little bit, because we see more will be evolve as identity frauds. So your personal card information is stolen, so to make fraudulent transactions. And then it will be like online payment fraud by customers. So they would make a purchase with you, and then they file a dispute with their issuer. So if they win the case, then they can get the refund and keep the goods. So these are bad customers. And we also see account takeover fraud. So that means the fraudster use your login credential stolen, and then to make the fraud transactions. And it can be through like breaches, phishing or hacking. Then they get your information, log into your financial account, make purchase, and then all delivered to their own address, or even change the details inside the account that you are not aware of. So for 2020, how different from the past? I think it is more like a data-driven market now for all e-commerce or any business online. So definitely there will be more transactions through digital, through online. So fraudster now have a larger opportunity to rise on that growth to take advantage. And I don't think even 2020 or even 2021 is unlikely better in that sense. So especially, I think a lot of criminals now, they have sophistication and quantity of phishings and account takeover attacks. All these, they have big data, analytics, and machine learning. So they can have a better tools and skills like malicious bots. So this is what I see more the industry participants should worry about. But at the same time, something positive is merchants and industry players, they now have access to larger amounts of customer data than ever before. So we will have enhanced fraud tools and enable the fraud managers to spot the suspicious activities. And at the same time, the users are also becoming more cautious about what to give out. They don't give out more than necessary when they do the transactions or even register an account. So I think in the future, for fraud prevention, the solution will just turn to data enablement, enrichment. That means that we'll be cross-checking information across a number of third-party sources, such as blacklists on the platform, and even social media, Facebook and IG we are using. So all this will be a war regarding the data usage.
Mm-hmm. No, that's quite interesting. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to add to Remus's point. I think it's important to just, you know, acknowledge fraud is not something just for the big guys. There are reports saying actually fraudsters are targeting SMEs as well. In fact, the report says 43% of fraud are targeted SMEs. Is not something, is something that can be addressed, is actually very well controlled right now in the payments industry if we look at it in totality. Going back to the earlier question about technology, right? One thing that has changed technology is a lot of expertise are very accessible now. Similarly, in the fraud space is really, I believe, an area that's best left for the experts to deal with. But these technologies have become very accessible. And for example, CyberSource, we're about to launch a new service that's making it easy for merchants and provided by, you know, our partners like GP, Global Payments, to make fraud management a seamless process. So every transaction just gets screened against over 200 different fraud parameters. in real time. So this level of expertise through technology, through APIs, becomes a lot more accessible now versus in the past where it is only in the realms of large enterprises where they have to deploy teams of people to actually monitor this. The way it's done now is completely accessible.
Leslie, I want to ask you actually, because some of this stuff is new to me, by the way. 200 parameters, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, have you had issues in the past, Leslie, or currently, or is it? Tell us. Ruby Tuesday fraud, is it a problem?
I wouldn't say that it was endemic, but obviously, like any enterprise, we have had issues in the past, and Gavin and Remus, we rely heavily on the global, on the payment gateways and on our cards, providers. Now, in the past, we signed up members on a sheet of paper. That was actually a barrier to membership because people don't like to part with their data and give it to a waiter or waitress, right? So in introducing a more sophisticated mobile app, that's taken that away, and actually we increased our membership exponentially in the last 12 months because we've done that with Tofugear. And then and then the other thing is that we had issues with people sharing physical cards and memberships, and again in moving to Tofugear, that's removed those issues where people can no longer share their physical cards amongst families. It's something that is very much driven by your own telephone. And again, if you have the right partners, if you're dealing with global payments, if you're dealing with the likes of Visa, the consumer knows that there are certain protections and standards within your operation. So again, it's about making the consumer comfortable. Can we eradicate it entirely? No, probably not. As Gavin said, people are far more sophisticated now, but certainly as a restaurant, as a restaurant operator, we can do everything we can through our own mobile application, our own payment systems to reduce the likelihood of fraud occurring, and we can illustrate that to our customers, and again generate loyalty through that. So yeah, again, the other advantages of having a more sophisticated system is being able to identify those anomalies, within the operation, and the award of erroneous points, in real time, and benefits possibly taken by employees, which now they wouldn't get away with. So I don't think it's a huge issue, but for sure, we have seen it in the past, and I've certainly seen it in other organizations that I've worked with.
Yeah. So thank you again, guys. We're just about out of time. So thank you for your insights. But before I let you go, and also I'm going to check, so the audience, if you guys have any questions, please do leave them in the Q&A box. We've got just a few more minutes. To kind of sum up what we've discussed, obviously, for Ruby Tuesday, this has been, I think, quite a big journey, and it's been very insightful to learn from Leslie, again, the man, the myth, the legend of the food and beverage industry in Hong Kong. Not only from a technical perspective and looking at how a restaurant can evolve and be ready for this new normal, but we've also dived into some very specific topics, such as how to build an effective loyalty program, what that loyalty program looks like, and by extension a membership program. Right, we've looked at certain things like as it relates to the business and the macroeconomic outlook and what to expect. Some of the trends we heard from Gavin and from Remus as well were very helpful. I think we learned a lot from them as well when it comes to this issue about fraud as an emerging issue, especially now as more companies are moving to conducting business online. The game there is changing a little bit, so it's really important to partner with these guys in particular to ensure that your revenue is safe for the most part, if anything, but also as well as your consumer, right? Your consumer needs to be safe as well. We also talked a little bit about crypto. And its role in sort of the value chain, and so now thinking ahead, right? Just really quick, I need really quick answers from you guys. Leslie, where's Ruby Tuesday going next, right? What can people be excited from a business perspective to look for in Ruby Tuesday, and what does success look like for you in the next year or so?
I think you know, we're going to be expanding our network of restaurants. We're going to be introducing you know, a number of new elements within those restaurants. So again, just because we're embracing data, you know, digital, doesn't mean that we're forgetting that it's all about the guest experience. Everything we do is about the guest experience.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Gavin, how about from your perspective, what are some of the areas that you think merchants need to focus on?
Yeah, for us, really, we recognize this is a very difficult time for a lot of businesses. And at Visa, we actually recognize that, and we've created a lot of resources to help business transform and move their business online. So I encourage everyone on the call to visit our website, look up Support Small or hashtag Where You Shop Matters. There you'll find a lot of resources to help you transform your business, as well as to mention some of the challenges we're facing in cash flow management and profitability.
That's fantastic. And Remus, what is Global Payments doing to help customers as well? And what should merchants be focusing on from your perspective?
Yeah, as a payment solution providers, I think the biggest takeaway from us is that one solution doesn't fit all the customers. And this development will later become more obvious as the shoppers are now looking for personalized experience. So instead of providing some standard payment products or secure solutions for our customers, I think we will offer bespoke services for our merchants, no matter big merchants or SME, so that they can build up their customer experience. Just like what Leslie mentioned, loyalty and membership, the most important. So we believe the trust by the customers on our merchants is the key for them to win the market. So if we can provide a secure environment to give confidence to our merchants and customers, I think that's the most important and the key we are doing for them. So and the trust from customer will ensure repeat purchase and growth of business. I think that is the way how merchants would win on the online market.
Agree, totally.
Yeah.
I think that's it. So again, audience, if you've got any questions, we probably have 1 or 2 more minutes. We're happy to take a few more questions, but that's all from me. So thank you again for joining.
Thanks, Kelson and the panel. I don't think there's any more further question from the chat. So I think we are good to wrap. We are slightly beyond time. Thanks everyone for staying through the webinar. We hope everyone enjoyed the session and find it useful for your business. And we'll be also sharing the link for the webinar recording to all the attendees who have signed up. Once again, thank you very much. If you want to reach out for the speakers who have spoken today, here's the email address. Feel free to reach out to them. And I think we are good. Thank you everyone for your participation and being such engaging.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.